Finally, they came to the foot of the stairs. After Mr. Adams unlocked a strange steel door, they entered the silo. Josh had never been inside the silo. He had always thought it would be filled with huge banks of scientific equipment, like the spaceships in the movies. But all he saw was a small room and something that looked like a white coffin covered with clear plastic. Several tubes and cables were attached to the machine next to the wall. There was nothing else in the room except a small desk. Josh and Sarah looked at the casket-like device. "What's that for, Dad?" Josh asked with sudden fear. "It's for you, Josh," Mr. Adams said quietly. "But what's it for?" Josh asked. He felt Sarah moving closer until she touched him, and knew that she was sharing his alarm. Mr. Adams put his arm around his wife and looked at the two youngsters, his face deadly serious. "The world is ending tonight, for a while at least." Josh felt Sarah's small hand creep into his. He took her hand and held it tight. "This war won't be like any that you've ever read about," Mr. Adams said. "It will probably last only a day or two, but it will be so terrible that the world as we know it now will be gone forever." Suddenly, there was a rumbling like distant thunder. They all looked up. Josh knew that anything they could hear so far under the earth through heavy concrete had to be something monstrous. He felt the concrete vibrate under his feet. Then there was a buzzing sound, and a red light went over the door. Mr. and Mrs. Adams looked at one another. Then Mrs. Adams put her arm around Sarah and said, "Sarah, it's time for you to go." "Go?" Sarah cried, and held Josh's hand more tightly. "Go where? I want to stay with Josh." "You can't, child," Mr. Adams said. "You see, this is what we've been working on ever since we saw the war was coming." He put his hand on the plastic canopy. "You can call it a sleep capsule, for that's its purpose. You'll just go to sleep. Then when it's safe, you'll be awakened, safe and alive." Josh's mother spoke gently to Sarah. "You see, there aren't two capsules in one place. This way, if something happens, some of the capsules will be sure to get through." "No one knows where the capsules are," Mr. Adams said. "It's a closely guarded secret. But after you come out, there'll be a way to get all of you together and start a better world." The buzzer sounded, and the red light flashed insistently. "Come along, Sarah," Mrs. Adams said. "I insisted on going with you to your location so you wouldn't be alone." She turned and held Josh in her arms tightly and said, "Good night, son. I love you very much." Josh's mother turned suddenly and moved to the desk. Opening a drawer, she took out a leather-bound book. She stroked the covers, then said, "Josh, for many years I've kept a journal. In it I've put down all the things I believe in." She held it out to him, and there were tears in her eyes. "I want you to have it, son." Josh took the book and held it carefully. He'd seen his mother writing in her journal and knew that she prized it highly. I'll keep it, Mom, and I'll read it, too." Mrs. Adams suddenly threw her arms around him again, whispering, "Whatever happens, Josh, we'll meet again." Then she released him, and Josh's father opened the massive steel door. An officer in a uniform was standing outside. Josh's mother pulled Sarah through the door, and just as it swung closed, Josh caught one glimpse at Sarah's pale face. With a catch in her voice, Sarah said, "Josh, I'll see you soon." Then the door clanged shut. Josh was left alone with his father. "Dad, what about you and Mom? Where will you be?" "Well, son, it's very complicated. You'll just have to trust me. We don't have much time," and a heavy rumble shook the silo again. "It's time, son." He must have seen the stark fear in the boy's eyes, and he asked gently, "Josh, do you remember last year when you and I climbed down the mountain in Colorado?" Josh nodded silently. "Well, you remember how you were afraid to go down the face of the steepest cliff? You said, 'I'll go down if you'll hold the rope, Dad.'" "I remember," Josh said. "Well, I'm asking you to do that again. I know you're afraid. Anyone would be. But if you'll trust me, I'll hold the rope." Josh looked into his father's face for a long moment. Then he said slowly, "All right, Dad. I'll do it." "Good." Josh's father hugged him. Then he stepped back and said, "Josh, for the last few weeks, something has been happening to me. I've been having, well, dreams, you might call them." He stopped, and there was the strangest look on his face. "I'm a scientist, and I've always laughed at such things, but Josh, night after night, I've had the same dream." "What was it, Dad?" Josh asked, seeing his father hesitate. "Well, a man comes to me. I can never see his face, and I can't really remember what he says, but he always says the same thing, and I can't understand any of it." "Are you afraid of him, Dad?" Josh questioned. "No. I always feel better after one of these visits. It's like everything's going to be all right, but I just can't remember him much, only the song." "The song?" Josh asked. "Yes. You know I don't sing very well, but almost every night for a long time he's been teaching me a song. I don't understand it much, but I think it has something to do with you and Sarah and what you'll find when you go up to the world again." "What does the song say?" "I made a tape of it. The tape is in there," Mr. Adams said, pointing to the brown case, "and some other things. I wanted to study the song, but it must be for you and Sarah. I'm almost sure the man in the dream told me that. You can keep your mother's journal in the case, too." The lights dimmed again, and Josh's father motioned for his son to climb into the white box. After Josh was comfortably settled, his father moved to unhook the props of the plastic canopy. Then he stopped and nodded to the control board. "See that switch, son?" Josh saw one red switch marked simply "Awake." "One day someone will throw that switch. Then you and Sarah and some others will come out of places like this and go into the world. I don't know what kind of place that world will be, but it won't be like anything you'll ever know. Now it's time for us to go, and I want you to promise me to do two things, okay, son?" "Yes, Dad." "First, when you come out of here, I want you to believe the song, the one on the tape. Then, for your mother, obey the book, the one she's given you. Will you say those things over and over again, Josh?" Josh began to say the words, "Believe the song, obey the book." As he repeated them, he heard his father say quietly, "Good night, Josh. I'll be near you." Then the lid closed, and there was a sound of escaping gas. Josh began to dive down into a deep sleep. He found himself saying again, "Believe the song, obey the book." Just as he dropped off into a strange sleep, he heard himself murmur, "Good night, Dad. I'll see you." Then he became part of the darkness that was all about.